Let me just clear something up about why cypionate ends up being an inferior ester for people, and theta as well, compared to testosterone cream. This is what cypionate does. Okay, this is what the long esters do. They provide you high systemic testosterone and moderate DHT. So just think about that for a second. High systemic T, okay, you get the anabolism and the benefits from just testosterone, but moderate DHT. But because they're creating high systemic testosterone, that also means they create proportionally higher systemic estradiol. And to dial in erections specifically on TRT, you need not to have high systemic estradiol and moderate DHT. That's an imbalance, right? Simply put, this is why people have problems on cypionate. That is the answer. Look no further than what I just said. Whereas, and by the way, this notion of TDE ratio and that you could scale the cypionate upward to get more DHT and therefore be in a better ratio of androgens to estradiol at the tissue level, and therefore you're going to have erections. This rarely pans out with the exception of a rare few. I see this in coaching every day, and I have seen that for years. So please don't let anyone give you that nonsense. It's far too non-nuanced of an argument. And it factors in DHT. It doesn't factor in DHT. The DHT estrogen axis is where you need to focus your attention. So back to the ratio thing. If you scale up your testosterone, cypionate, well, guess what happens? You get higher DHT. But because you get generally more systemic T and moderate DHT, as far as ratios are concerned with testosterone cypionate, you also then get more aromatization. You try to scale the testosterone up to get DHT to 100 nanograms per deciliter, you're aromatizing to 55, 60, or 70. It is not enough DHT to counterbalance the E2. So then what are you going to do? Put a couple drops of DHT on the scrotum, you push it up to 150, 190 nanograms per deciliter, 200, and then you have some erectile quality, but with 58 or 65 estradiol, and you're retaining a bunch of water, and you start acting like a female to your girlfriend, and you're worried about what's on her phone, and you have moon face. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Now, for some people with cypionate, they get high systemic T and they convert a lot to DHT, enough to counterbalance that, and they end up in a reasonable place. Say they're a somewhat low aromatizer. That's where cypionate works for people. Okay? But for a lot of people, this problem is the problem. You can't just scale it up and expect the ratios to fall in proportion. Guys that go on cycle more often than not, I'm not talking about the exceptions, I'm talking about the mean, have erectile dysfunction. Why? Because as they're trying to scale up their DHT with a higher dose of testosterone, they're also scaling up the estradiol. And because cypionate itself is more high systemic T, moderate DHT, the ratios don't work. Okay, so said people go on testosterone cream for TRT, okay, they get moderate, this is the difference, moderate systemic T, enough though to support anabolism, high DHT, and lower aromatization. Dude, then the ratio fits. Because that's what you have as a natty. That's what you have as a natty. All right? So if that makes sense, not everyone should be on cream. But if you're having problems with testosterone cypionate, think about the ratios. Okay, if anybody tells you that you just scale up the test and TDE ratio is what you should focus on, tune them out. I am telling you from a coach's perspective, that is wrong. It's wrong. You can scale that cypionate up as long as you want and as far as you want. And guess what you're going to get? High hematocrit, excessively high estradiol, moon face, water retention, nipple sensitivity, or not. Some people don't get that. Not enough DHT to counterbalance the estrogen because the ratio isn't even capable of doing that. Cypionate is not capable typically of doing that. And you're going to be sitting at 60 whatever estradiol with high DHT, but everything's still not going to work and you're going to have problems. It is not worth it. Don't try it. This is why people have to take AIs on cypionate, because then that makes the ratio work. If they tolerate aromatase inhibitors, not everybody does. People have problems with those. Then the ratio works though, because you're sitting at 100 or something nanograms per deciliter DHT, but the estradiol is at 30. Then it makes sense. But that is impossible to achieve without using an AI in a lot of cases, which is why people have to shift to cream. Cypionate, high systemic T, moderately high systemic aromatization or estradiol, or high estradiol, moderate DHT. It just doesn't make sense for some folks. Cream, normal systemic T, high DHT, moderate to low end estradiol. You dial in. Hope that makes sense, boys. Take heed.